It's election day. The pitches have been made, and now it is your job to get out there and do your civic duty and go vote on both sides of our state line. The polls are open in Missouri as we start off the show here at 6:05 on a Tuesday morning. And, of course, in Kansas, they will open up at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock. So get out there, go vote. There is not a show, and I say this with pride, that has given you more access to the people on your ballot today than this one. And, of course, within reason. We can't get to everybody. There are certain races that are just not big enough, not compelling enough to the broad base of this audience to spend 8 to 10 minutes on them. But for the most part, you've got a situation where you can find almost any major candidate on your ballot today on this show via podcast. You search the name Mike Kehoe. You search Jay Ashcroft. You search Bill Eigel. You search Prasanth Reddy, Karen Cernovich, Derek Schmidt. You search any of those names, and you will see these individuals at one point or another having been on this show. So if you're still in that mode where you need a crash course, you've got to figure out, I don't know what to do. I got to go to the polls, but I don't know what to do. Well, you've got, several hours left to go listen to them and their podcasts from this show and see what you think. The Missouri governor's race is right now the one that in this region has gotten the most amount of attention, has also had the most amount of money sunk into it. And as we sit here on Election Day, I believe Mike Kehoe is the favorite. Do I think he's a heavy favorite? No. But I do believe he's the favorite. He's had the most money. He has had a pitch that is not necessarily the most conservative pitch. I mean, that's clearly been Bill Eigel going for that lane, but it's been a pitch on, yes, conservative leadership and getting things done. And that's been the question. I mean, people have been sending me DMs. What do we do? How do we make sure that, the right person gets in office? Who's our Ron DeSantis? I'm not going to lie. I don't know if there is a Ron DeSantis in this race. I don't. I think each candidate certainly would make of the major three, of course, there's always 17 people running, but of the major three candidates who actually have a chance to win this thing, which is Mike Kehoe, Jay Ashcroft, and Bill Eigel, they would each make very good governors in their own rights, in their own unique ways. But is there a Ron DeSantis here? I don't know. But here's the thing. When Ron DeSantis won his first race for office back in 2018, remember, he barely won that race. Barely. I mean, it was a razor-thin race. And think about how different Florida would be today had he not won that race against Andrew Gillum, who it turned out was smoking crack in a den somewhere, a creepy condo den somewhere after all was said and done. But that state would look very different. But Ron DeSantis was not predicted to be Ron DeSantis when he won back in 2018. He was a backbencher in Congress who went back to his home state, ran for governor, eked out a primary win thanks to Trump, and then, of course, eked out a general election win against Andrew Gillum. And then, of course, he got in office and became Ron DeSantis. So you don't really know who somebody is going to be sometimes until they get in office. But I do believe this much. No matter who wins this primary today, they will be the next governor. With the way the state is made up right now, Democrats don't have all that compelling of a candidate in Crystal Quade, and it's a presidential year. The Republican is going to win. So today is really the day that we find out who the next governor of Missouri is going to be, barring something unforeseen like a Todd Aiken type moment, John.
Well, certainly it's the highest profile race, but I would say in terms of weaponry, Lieutenant Governor and Secretary of State have probably fostered more in weapon sales.
Yeah, I think it's in the...
Isn't that crazy?
I believe it is in state law that if you run for lieutenant governor, you must run an ad on television with you with a bazooka.
I think
you
better have something with at least flames, if not, semi-automatic.
Yes. Now, speaking of that race, by the way, if you didn't see it, Donald Trump made an endorsement last night in the lieutenant governor's race. And this is one of those races where there's 10 people running in Missouri and no one knows what the heck to do. So Trump puts out an endorsement at 6:22 last night on Truth Social. This is very reminiscent of 2022 when he waited till the last minute to endorse Eric in the Missouri U.S. Senate race. Of course, there were two Erics in that race. Last night, he writes here, two highly respected America First patriots, Holly Rader and David Wassinger, are running for lieutenant governor of Missouri, a state that I love, and won big, all caps, in 2016 and 2020. Both fierce advocates of Make America Great Again. Holly and David have been with us from the very beginning, and either one would be an incredible lieutenant governor who will tirelessly work to grow the economy, stop inflation, cut taxes and regulation, defend our always under siege Second Amendment, support our brave vets and law enforcement, promote our wonderful farmers and manufacturers, and champion Missouri values. They are MAGA all the way. Trump writes here, I'm honored to give both Holly Rader and David Wassinger my complete and total endorsement to be the next lieutenant governor of the great state of Missouri. Holly or David, all caps, will never let you down.
Woo!
Okay.
Such a nice man.
First off, politicians inherently let you down. That's what they do. I'm going to go run for Trump on November 5. I'm going to sprint to the ballot box in November. But stop with the politicians won't let me down. They let all of us down. That's part of the job, to let you down. And I'm also kind of over like the dual endorsement thing. I don't know. I'm like, either endorse one person or just like hang tight. Okay? This whole I'm going to double my chances of improving my batting average, so to speak. Got to keep the winning percentage high. I love you, man. I love you, Don. But please, spare me the double endorsement, brother.
If he endorses three people, only one win. So that's two losses.
Oh, man. But yes, he did come out with a late endorsement in the lieutenant governor's race. And let's be honest, endorsements in races like that are usually more about, what consultants and what advisors know what Trump consultants and Trump advisors and, who knows who. That's really all it is. No one is deeply studying at Mar-a-Lago the Missouri lieutenant governor's race. We're barely doing it here. There's too many people running. And part of the problem in Missouri, and it's a good problem in the sense that, you are term limited out. But then these folks get term limited out, and it's like, well, what am I running for next? I got to stay in politics, right? And then they all run as the conservative outsider. It's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't get termed out and then be like, I'm the outsider. It's like, no, you're running because basically you get in the boot and you're liking the gravy train a little too much down there in Jeff City, it seems like, or your ego can't help it, John.
Yep. I'm thinking of this. I'm John Anthony. I have a tank. And I'm running for dog catcher. Right.
Well, I got two tanks, John, so what are you going to do for that?
Look out.
Oh, watch out,
I guess
brother.
I'm a rhino.
Yeah. Oh, man. Speaking of rhinos, coming up on KCMO, if you missed it yesterday, I think it was certainly the most viral interview of the Missouri election cycle this late in the game. I got called fake news. I got called rhino. I got called it all because I asked somebody about, their own campaign platform. Who was it? What happened? We'll play the audio for you on an election day. And as you go to the polls, give us a call. Tell us what the polls look like and who you ended up voting for. Here on 95.7 FM, KCMO. It always gets a little silly down the home stretch of these election cycles. Of course, today is election day in Missouri and Kansas. You will be going to the polls. They're open in Missouri. They open at 7 o'clock on the Kansas side of the state line. So yesterday, we had on somebody on the show who has been viral on social media for the last several months. Name is Valentina Gomez. She is running for Secretary of State. And she puts out these ridiculous videos on social media where she talks about and obsesses over people being weak and gay. And I've never had her on the show. I didn't think she was a serious person or a serious candidate. But she did reach out and threaten this show with an FCC complaint. Now, the reality is this is a news show, so we do not have to abide by these equal time complaints that some candidates try to throw our way. We just don't have to do it. There's a reason you don't see every person who's ever filed for presidency on Fox News and CNN. There's a reason for that. As a news show, we don't have to do that. But some people like to think they know the FCC rules better than we do, and she happened to be one of them. So I had her on the show yesterday, and it did not go well for her because she brought up the FCC complaint on her own. And I asked her a very simple question as the interview started, which is about all these crazy videos that she posts on social media about people being weak and gay. So in case you missed it, this did go viral yesterday on our end on social media. So here is the first couple of minutes of this interview with Valentina Gomez, and you can decide for yourself whether or not this is a serious candidate. Now, in the meantime, if you are on social media ahead of the elections tomorrow, you may have seen our next guest on social media with some various viral clips that, have been criticized by some, have been praised by others. She is Valentina Gomez. She is running for Secretary of State, and a lot of the videos have sounded something like this.
It's 6 a.m., and I'm doing the 15-mile run from St. Louis City to Creveport, Missouri, without the hundreds of preachers that wanted to join me because they pissed off a bunch of weak and gay people that always find a way to mess things up.
All right, Valentina Gomez. Good morning. We appreciate you being on KCMO. What is the point of basing a Secretary of State campaign around people being weak and gay?
Good morning, Pete. Thank you so much for having me, and good morning to the beautiful people of Missouri. And you have definitely seen me. Come on. And, Pete, I speak the truth. I'm Valentina Gomez. Speak the truth, expose the crooks, catch pedophiles, and tomorrow I will be Missouri's 41st Secretary of State. And let's talk about transparency from the very beginning, Pete. You've had multiple irrelevant candidates on your show, and my team had to involve the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, for this interview to happen one day before the election, even though I am the most requested and known candidate in the history of Missouri politics. Pete, this is why fake news media like yours is dying.
Well, to be clear, yes, you did beg to come on the show, and you did threaten the FCC. And just so you know the FCC rules, we do not have to have you on the show as a news program, so we are not required to do equal time. But I said, if you're going to get on your hands and knees and beg us to come on the show, we'll gladly do it. So that's why you're on the show. So now you can answer the question, why is being weak and gay part of a campaign platform to run for Secretary of State?
Pete, I don't beg anyone. I only kneel before God, and these weak and gay politicians have destroyed Missouri, have destroyed the future of our young children. And I don't need to beg for anything.
But you did beg to be on the show. Just to be clear, just so you know the audience is on the same page, I was not going to bring up the FCC thing, but you chose to go there. So once again, why do people have to worry about who's weak and who's gay when it comes to voting for a Secretary of State candidate?
Because it's the truth, because I'm transparent, and you have to be transparent to the people. And I don't beg for anything. If you want to have me off the show, that's fine.
All right. Well, I guess
I get more views than anybody else in Missouri politics.
Yes, that is true. So now views are nice. Views may matter to some. But once again, what's the campaign platform for running for Secretary of State?
Pete, it's speaking the truth, doing the right thing for the people, not selling them out. Simple as that. And tomorrow we win. Tomorrow we show you don't have to sell the people out to special interests to become an elected official. Tomorrow we show you can win an election with votes, not with money. And yes, they beat me 1,000,000 to 1 in fundraising, but you win by moving the hearts and minds of people from all over the world by doing the right thing, by speaking the truth. And tomorrow, we end many corrupt political careers.
All right, that was Valentina Gomez running for Secretary of State yesterday. I got more people texting and sharing that, and then I looked at the podcast downloads this morning, and I went, whoa! So that yesterday went viral, and you know, the reality is this. I was going to save everybody the time of putting cartoon characters on this radio show. But if they want to play the little song and dance and do the whole I'm going to file with the FCC, then we'll ask you about your ridiculous social media posts where you call everybody weak and gay, John.
Had the feel of Marty Bird in Ozark, didn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to the big house at the lake.
Yeah, it did have a little Marty Bird feel to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wendy.
Oh, man. Yes.
Wendy Bird.
Yes. Well, you know what's interesting about Valentina Gomez? Her name is not even Valentina Gomez.
Oh, is it AKA? Like
her name
John
is
Anthony?
Well, no, not quite like that.
Oh.
Her name is Valentina Gomez Noriega.
Oh, I did see that when I looked up. I thought, well, that's interesting.
Yes.
That might have connotations if a person heard that last name.
Exactly right. That's what I was wondering. You know, and I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying I looked at the MEC reports, Missouri Ethics Commission, and her name is Noriega. That's her last name. She goes by Valentina Gomez. So, you know, you've got a lot of people on the ballot today, especially on the Missouri side, just because some of these statewide races, like everyone and their mother thinks they can be a statewide official in this state now. And that's one of the problems when your state becomes exclusive to one political party. And I'm not complaining about it in Missouri. I'm just saying if there's a problem with it, it's now everybody thinks they can run statewide and everybody thinks they can be a statewide office holder. And you can literally be asked about your own campaign platform and then you call the person who asked you about it fake news. It's like, I'm just asking you about all your videos where you're calling people weak and gay. And I'm trying to get clarity on what that has to do with the Secretary of State's race. And I'm still sitting here the morning after with no answers. But, you know, I guess that's how it goes sometimes. And some of you on the text line right now are, I guess, agreeing with Valentina Gomez's assessment of me in this show, which, yeah, that's your prerogative. I think it was Wes who called in afterwards and was like yesterday, he goes, oh, vote for her as a protest vote. I'm like, you know what? You get what you vote for. I don't know what to tell you. Okay? You get what you vote for. That's all I've got on that front. 913-408-7957 as we roll through Election Day here on KCMO Talk Radio. Yesterday was all about the markets. What is going to happen today? What are we looking at today after a down day yesterday? It started off big. It rallied a little bit. And now we sit here and we wait to try to figure out how to potentially dig out of this. But these are very tumultuous times in the markets. A lot of concerns about where this economy is headed overall. And we'll give you the latest on this coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. We are streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Liz Klayman from the Fox Business Network will be here just after 7 on KCMO. The roller coaster in the stock market likely to continue today. Yesterday, of course, was ugly. Now, things overall were not as ugly as they started. All right? I mean, at one point yesterday, you had the major indices off 4, 5, 6%. That's not how they ended the day. But certainly it was not a pretty day. You had the Dow dropping over 1,000 points, 2.5%. S&P slid 3%. It was their worst session since September of 2022. The NASDAQ shed 3.5%. So that's what happened yesterday. And this came after a couple of things took place the last couple of trading days. Friday, of course, was a terrible jobs report. You had a jobs number that came in at 114,000 increase in payrolls versus the expectations for 175,000. So way below the expectations. Also, and this is always overlooked when jobs reports come out, June's jobs report was revised down. Wow, can't believe it.
Talk about a bombshell.
Surprise. I know. June's numbers revised lower to 179,000 from 206,000. And May's gains also revised lower to 216,000 from 218,000. The unemployment rate jumped 4.3% up from 4.1% last month. So you have a very soft jobs number, and that starts to spark concerns about, is the Fed still too tight on monetary policy? That brings up the issue of, is a recession looming? All these things start to pop up. And then on Monday, really Sunday night into Monday morning, the Japanese stock market falls off a cliff. It has its worst day since 1987, the Tuesday after Black Monday. So 37 years ago. That's how long it had been since the Japanese stock market got hit the way it did. And then, of course, our stock market yesterday started off way down and slowly seemed to rebuild throughout the day. But it was not pretty. Now, where are things at today? Futures, it looks like, are up slightly today. And part of this is because the Japanese markets had a big day last night. So Japanese shares finished 10% higher yesterday. So after getting crushed 2 days ago, there's a big swing back where people are buying things up left and right. And overall, Asia had a pretty good Tuesday. South Korea rebounded by 3%. Taiwan stocks gained 3.5%. Hong Kong's index, which closed later, was down a fraction of a percent, 0.3%. So we don't know what's going on. We just know volatility is going to be incredibly high for likely the foreseeable future, possibly all the way through the election. But it's going to be, at the very least, a bumpy next few weeks as we try to get some signal from the Fed as to what they might do when it comes to a potential rate cut in September, which is when they're scheduled to next meet. They could also call an emergency meeting, and what they could end up doing is doing an emergency rate cut before September. But regardless, if you're Kamala Harris, who now is the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party, you do not want to be taking this mantle from Pops with a very shaky stock market. You just don't want to do that. Ask John McCain about what it's like to take the mantle from somebody as the stock market is falling off a cliff. I'm not suggesting this is 2008, but my point is it does not help your presidential prospects. Even when you've got the media kissing your rear end at every opportunity, it's not going to help your prospects. So yesterday, as all this is going on, I'm watching Fox Business, I'm watching CNBC, and this clip comes up with Jim Cramer. Of course, Mad Money Jim Cramer on CNBC. And I was shocked he said this. I'm surprised you can be employed by Comcast. You can get a check cut by Comcast, and you can say this and still have a job.
If you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump. If that's what you do.
You do?
Yeah, well, he wants to cut your taxes.
Oh, he wants to cut taxes.
Your taxes.
My taxes got raised enormously,
well,
as you know, under the last Trump administration.
I don't know if he wants to cut your president.
No. I'm in a blue state.
Oh, yeah, no, forget you're out.
They want to kill
out.
us.
I tried to reorganize. I tried to go to.
They want to put us out of business.
Pennsylvania.
That's what they want to do to us.
I can become an
Italian
Italian citizen more easily in Pennsylvania
by getting rid of the salt tax deduction.
So that's Jim Cramer, CNBC, with one of his co-hosts there yesterday. And, he makes it very clear.
If you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump.
If you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump. Now, Jim Cramer is not one of these, overtly political, certainly not super conservative kind of guys. Just not who he is. But he's also not a dummy. He's made some really epically bad stock picks. I think he said to hang on to Lehman Brothers before they, went out of business 16 years ago now. So he certainly made some epic picks. However, he also once in a while makes some sense. And this is all that Donald Trump needs to be doing. This is it. All Donald Trump needs to be doing over the next 12 weeks is going out there and talking about your paycheck. And if the markets start to falter, and I don't want them to, I don't. Some people are like, oh, you just want the markets to go down because, well, it helps Trump. No, Trump should be able to win this thing without the markets going down. If Trump can't win this thing without the markets going down, then that means he just ran an absolutely horrible campaign. And it's been a bad couple of weeks for him. There's no doubt about it. He had a great couple of weeks, Biden debate through the RNC. The last couple of weeks have just stunk. It's been unfocused. It's been a bad job all around. But he does not need a bad stock market to win. So I am not rooting for that because he doesn't need it. But all he's got to talk about is this economy, your prices being up 20% the last 4 years, and how you can get people back into a place where they're not working 2 jobs to make ends meet. We have a record number of people working 2 jobs right now in this country. It is the most overlooked data point in the jobs report every month. And it's how many people now are not just working 1 job. They're working 2 jobs. They're working 3 jobs just to maintain the lifestyle they had 3, 4, 5 years ago. That's all Trump needs to hit. Instead, by the way, we got this from Trump last night on Truth Social. This is 7 hours ago. So this was like almost 1 a.m. in Mar-a-Lago, East Coast time. He puts up this post on Truth Social. Kamala Harris is afraid to debate me on Fox News. She will be easier to defeat on the debate stage than crooked Joe Biden. Just watch. Kamala? What are we doing here? Is that a typo, or is that like, are we going for a nickname? Kamala? What the heck's going on here? Oh, no, it's not a typo, because 12 hours ago, he said people will vote with their stomach, and food is now at an all-time high because of Kamala Biden incompetence. With them in charge, it will only get worse. I don't even get it. Like, I like Trump's nicknames. I don't get Kamala. Maybe someone knows what that means, but I don't. I'm so confused. 913-408-7957. Paul's in Kansas City. He's on KCMO. What's up, Paul?
Video yesterday that Fox ran on Comrade Harris where she says, everybody doesn't start at the same starting point, but everybody must end at the same finishing point. Well, that's Karl Marx right there. So she's saying those people out in Blue Valley that own those big houses didn't start at the same point, that we've got to make sure that everybody finishes with that house in Blue Valley. So how do you do that? You nationalize private property and you redistribute it.
Yep.
I was stunned when I saw that video. I was like, uh-oh. That's all Trump's got to do.
That's it, man. This is not. It's really not hard. It's not.
It's not. It's 101. It's a target-rich environment politically for him. That's all he's got to do. I don't want to hear anything about 2020. Nothing. Just focus on her and her Comrade Harris, and just call her Comrade Harris. That's all you got to do.
That's good. I mean, at least I get that. I don't even get. Thank you, Paul. Kamala. I'm confused. John Gardner, go. Good morning.
Hey, Pete, good morning. Love you, but I'm really mad at you right now. I mean, Trump's been a little off focus, a little sloppy, but I don't think you were even here, man. But when he was at that Black Press Corps, and I thought that was a game changer. I thought that was brilliant. I mean, that just got all kinds of social media traction. I really thought it was vintage Trump. I think he was at his best there. I think J.D. Vance is coming back into the fold here a little bit. No, I think you're being too, I mean, Kamala, I don't know, but you're being a little too harsh on the guy. I think he's doing better than you think he is.
Well, I just think there's too much at stake. Listen, there's too much at stake. He's done this 3 times now in a row. He's a seasoned pro, and we can't afford, this country can't afford any missteps. So if I'm being tough on him, it's because the country's on the line, John.
Fair enough.
You know? We
need
the best of the best, the most focused ever, because I'm not convinced, just in terms of the country as we know it, being able to handle another 4 years of someone like Kamala Harris. So if I'm being tough on Trump, I don't, maybe that rubs people the wrong way, but I don't really care. I care more about the country than I do Donald Trump's feelings.
Well, I mean, that's fair, but him being, silly and sloppy and loose like that, it puts the attention back on him. I mean, it's almost like
No. I'm not freaking out over the Kamala thing. It's kind of just part and parcel for what's been a weird couple of weeks. The attacking Brian Kemp, the firing at Republicans. I don't get it, John. We've got to focus on one thing and one thing only, and that's, as Paul said it, Comrade Harris.
Well, I get it, but you get like a Mitt Romney or something who supposedly just, stays measured and focused and by the book. Doesn't work.
No, it doesn't work right now, but the notion that, there's either Mitt Romney or Trump, attacking Brian Kemp and giving weird nicknames to people, I mean, there's something in between that would make some sense,
But you know what? We're talking about it, so I just think when the media attention's focused on him, I love it. I think it's working.
Yeah, thank you, John. I disagree. Trump's better when the focus is not on him. Trump's at his literally. The 2 weeks after the debate, before he almost got assassinated, Trump was in hiding. It was all about Biden. Is Biden going to fall out? Is Biden going to stay in the race? All the Democratic infighting. And the best thing Trump did was literally not do anything. He played golf. He lived his life. 2016, you go back to that point, became a referendum on Hillary, right? 2020 became a referendum on Trump. If everyone's talking about you and the referendum's on you, you probably lose. He needs to make this all about Kamala, who most people don't know. Here's the thing, too. What most people if you're listening right now, you're probably more into politics than the average person is. You know about Kamala Harris. You know she was the most liberal senator when she was in the U.S. Senate. The average person who's on TikTok doesn't know anything about Kamala Harris. They don't. Like, you assume everybody knows as much about politics and Kamala Harris as you do. They don't. So all Trump needs to do is talk about her and her record. That's it.
And when he wasn't hiding, his numbers were the highest they've
Yes. When he was nowhere to be found, Trump's numbers had never been higher. So do with that information what you will. Now, Kamala today is set to talk about, and announce her VP pick. Who will it be? Who should it be? There are two very different answers. We'll get to it coming up on KCMO Talk Radio. 6:53 as we roll till 7 o'clock. Liz Claman, Fox Business Network, just after 7 on the crazy markets here on KCMO. The open is implying a positive day across the board, so we'll see how that plays out here on 95.7 FM when they open up at 8:30 this morning, which will also be a tirade Tuesday. So talking about the markets, which is where we were for the last few minutes, I just brought up that, listen, Trump does not need a bad stock market to win. He doesn't. Trump is in a place right now where he should be able to beat Kamala Harris. I know people want to complain about the media. For the most part, that is a waste of time. We know what the media is. It's been 17 days since Kamala Harris has become the presumptive nominee, and she has not said anything meaningful of note. She has not been asked any serious questions by media, but that is par for the course. But Trump can still easily win this thing. He's just got to stay super focused. And it's my opinion that he has lost some of that focus over the last couple of weeks. It's not one big thing. It's just like a bunch of little things. I mean, even Laura Ingraham last night was annoyed that Trump was ripping Brian Kemp, the governor of Georgia, over the weekend.
And in Georgia, it was a great crowd. Everyone's really happy. And then, some of it became about Brian Kemp, the Republican governor. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. Shooting inside the tent right now of the Republican Party, that's a loser strategy. That's not going to work. They tried that in 2020, and we lost 2 Senate seats.
John in Grain Valley's next up. John, you're on KCMO. Good morning.
Hey, yeah, thank you. I have to agree with you, and I have to adamantly disagree with the John you had on before, because Trump has his voters. He's got his base. He doesn't need to worry about them. They're going to vote for him. He's got to swing that 20 to 30% of the ones who are kind of like, yeah, I don't really know, maybe yes. But when he gets out there and he starts the buffoonery, that's when those people go, yeah, that's why I don't like him, and that's why I can't vote for him. And I agree. If you're the jerk, the goal is the same: get elected. The plan has now changed because Crazy Joe is gone, and now we got Comrade Kamala in there, and we've got to focus on that. So you've got to get those voters, those 10, 20% who are kind of like, I can't stand what I'm seeing, but then they look at Trump, like you said, going after a Republican, a guy who's going to support you, reliving the past. Let it go. You've got to let it go and start sounding sane and seasoned. You can still beat Trump, but going off on these tirades, and I've talked to friends like, that's why I don't like that guy. That's why I don't like him. And those are the people who will just simply not vote for you, and those are the ones you desperately need.
Mm-hmm.
This thing should be able to be wrapped up. You've got a side-by-side comparison. Kamala and Joe have decimated the middle class with all the regulations you're putting in on light bulbs, air conditioners, home heating, all these different things, locking down the fossil fuel industry. All these things line up perfectly for Trump and Trump voters. He has his base. Keep that base and gain on it, but you don't do it by pointing fingers at everybody like a school kid.
John, thank you very much. Appreciate it, my man, as we roll till 7 o'clock. Walter's in Spring Hill. Got a minute, Walter? It's all yours, buddy.
Well, I'm going to touch on what the last guy said. That is the one biggest complaint that I have about Trump. I love his policies. I love what he did for the country, but he needs to stop the stupid stuff like calling names, whatever. Stick to the issues. They speak for themselves, and let's get this thing done.
And it can get done. It can get done with ease. I mean, this should be, frankly, the easiest election Donald Trump has ever run. Thank you, Walter. The easiest election he has ever run in his life. I mean, this thing is set up perfectly for him. 4 years, especially pre-COVID, of the successes on the economy, foreign policy, and elsewhere, versus 4 years of Joe Biden. Going up against, by the way, Kamala Harris, who the media totally blacked this out, but was, and still is, the least popular vice president in modern American history based on polling. This thing should be in the bag. And it's not good enough to win by 1 or 2 points. You got to win this thing by 5 or 6 when all is said and done in some of the key states. Now, for Kamala, she will announce her VP pick today. It will be either Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, or Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. If she's serious about winning, it will be Shapiro. If she's serious about appeasing her left-wing base, it will be Walz. And we'll watch it here on KCMO. Well, Tirade Tuesday is 15 minutes away. I know it's an election day, but that could make for some very entertaining tirades as well. So that is 15 minutes away on KCMO Talk Radio. Just because it's election day, if you think we're not doing Tirade Tuesday, come on now. You're kidding yourself. Opening bell is also in 10 minutes. We'll see how the markets open up after yesterday's ugly, ugly day to kick off the week on Wall Street. Kamala Harris, according to CNN, is set to pick Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, as her running mate, and that is a gift to Donald Trump. Now it's his job to not screw it up. They had 2 choices in the Democratic Party, Tim Walz or Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. One, much more progressive than the other and doesn't deliver a state. The other one appeals more to moderates, also appeals more to Jewish Americans, and Kamala Harris and the Democratic leadership said no thanks. 18 electoral votes on the line in Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris more or less has to win it. And they turned their back on a very popular governor there, in part because, yes, he's Jewish. There also may be some baggage there in terms of, interactions allegedly with women a long time ago. But, I mean, unless the guy was in bed with a little boy or something, he was the far superior pick to Tim Walz for Kamala Harris. Some called him the white Jewish Obama in terms of how good he is on the stump. And they turned their back on that guy, governor of a key swing state, for Tim Walz, who let his city burn back in 2020. His major city, Minneapolis, burned in 2020 in the name of George Floyd, who is as progressive sneakily as they come. You wouldn't think of, maybe Minnesota being that way, but trust me, it is. And we're going to learn a lot more about that guy in the days and weeks ahead. And already some of it is starting to come out here. But he completely shut down his state during COVID. He's been all about, letting kids transition, all this nonsense. And I've got audio of it I'll play throughout the show here on KCMO. That being said, in Jackson County on Election Day, there's a belief that race is playing a role in the Democratic primary for Jackson County prosecutor. On the Republican side, Tracy Chappell will be the nominee to replace Jean Peters Baker, as bad of a prosecutor as you can find, and we've got her right here in our own backyard. One of the biggest reasons for the massive increase in homicides in Kansas City has been the work or lack thereof of Jean Peters Baker's office. So you've got 3 people running in this race on the Democratic side, and obviously the Democrats going to be a favorite. How big of a favorite, we don't know, but they'll be a favorite. So you've got Melissa Johnson, who is Quentin Lucas's director of public safety. You have John Gromowski, who is right now somebody who works in Jean Peters Baker's office. And you have Stephanie Burton, who is an attorney. Stephanie Burton is black. Melissa Johnson is black. John Gromowski is a white guy. There are now allegations that a PAC that has used $300,000 in this race called Stop Gun Violence Now is basically trying to use its power and use its money to split the black vote in Jackson County, which would then allow John Gromowski to be the candidate in Jackson County. Here's part of the reporting from KCTV5 last night on this. This is Angie Raccono.
Here's who is affiliated with the PAC. Kansas City attorney Lua Corso is the treasurer. Attorney Kevin Regan is an officer. We have reached out to both for comment and an explanation, but have not heard back.
The question becomes why? Why would they? And the only feasible answer that I can come up with is that they are trying to dilute my base because they are concerned that I'm going to win.
We reached out to John Gromowski, who says his campaign is not affiliated with this PAC. He does not share concerns there is an organized effort to split the black vote. Mr. Gromowski declined an on-camera interview, but sent this. My campaign is trying to earn the votes of all of Jackson County voters by showing I am the most experienced and best qualified person to be the next Jackson County prosecutor. Conceding votes to any other candidate is not part of my campaign strategy. We have not been able to connect with Stephanie Burton. We have called her, sent an email, and reached out on social media. Angie Racono, KCTV5 News.
All right, that's the report from KCTV5 in this Jackson County prosecutor's race on the Democratic side of the aisle. Gwen Grant, head of the Urban League in Kansas City, of course, not a fan of this. She is supporting Melissa Johnson, and she is saying here, quote, yesterday, this PAC has spent substantial amounts of support of John Gromowski and Stephanie Burton, evidently using Burton to split the black vote. So that's this suggestion that, you know, they want Melissa Johnson to be the Democratic nominee against Tracy Chappell, the Republican side, and they're using this PAC money to get some love to Stephanie Burton, who's probably the least well-known of the three candidates on the Democratic side, to get her attention and split the black vote. And my question is this. When do people of all backgrounds stop voting based on one's skin color? Now, I know that I'm just like a heterosexual white guy, so I know that, you know, these are things that if I were to say, they become a little taboo in some sense, but I don't think they should be. Like, when do we sit here and say, you know what, I'm just going to vote for somebody who I think is the best person for the job? And frankly, I have questions about all the Democrats running in that Jackson County prosecutor's race, because what we really need is a tough-on-crime prosecutor, and I'm not convinced anybody who has a D next to their name right now is willing to be a tough-on-crime prosecutor. They always got to do the happy chat nonsense BS instead of just saying, no, we're going to put criminals where they belong, behind bars, and, you know, is there some role to play in terms of making them better people down the road? Maybe. But that's not the job of a prosecutor. You commit the crime, you're going to do the time. That's it. That's all I want to hear from my prosecutor. I don't want to hear the feel-good BS and nonsense. I just want to hear, you commit a crime, we're going to put you in prison. That's it. And these three have not exactly, you know, been willing to just say that. I think because they're afraid. But regardless of any of this, the notion here from Gwen Grant and others is that the black voter in Jackson County basically only has two choices, Melissa Johnson and Stephanie Burton. And I would ask why. I find that wildly insulting. That the assumption is that a black voter would just go to the polls and vote for a black person. I'm not saying they wouldn't be more likely to lean that way, but why do we just sit here and make the assumption that, well, you know, a black voter is going to go obviously to the polls on behalf of a black person. And this PAC money that's going to help Stephanie Burton is really just being used to split the black vote. Why? And if you believe that about a voter or a voting bloc, what does that say about you? I mean, we have elected a black man as president in this country, right? You know what we haven't actually done? And I say this as an Italian American. We've never had an Italian in the White House. I'm just saying. Now, I'm not sitting here like all upset about it or losing sleep over it. I'm just kind of noting that. I don't sit here and say, well, you know, that guy's Italian, so I'm going to, you know, vote for him in the polls. I just think we've got to get our minds away from that mentality of, first off, assuming people care about the skin color of a candidate, and then two, using it as an excuse for why a certain candidate may not end up winning in a primary. It's just appealing to the lowest common denominator is all it's doing.